Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat coming to you, of course, from the Simon Scott Assembly Hall, where tonight the Indiana Hoosiers welcomed in the UC Davis Aggies in a game that was a lot more difficult than I think the fans expected, and maybe the players. Archie didn't let on. He thought he was going to be a tough game tonight, but a much tougher game, as Indiana did not lead in this game until very late. As a matter of fact, there was one lead change, and they were tied one time. The time of possession with the lead, UC Davis, 31 minutes. Indiana with the last 5 minutes of the game when they really seemed to turn the intensity up defensively and offensively, but specifically defensively, they really cranked it up against UC Davis.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I mean, in the offseason when I was, looking through the schedule and ranking the opponents by difficulty, I had UC Davis as the highest non-Power 6 conference opponent that Indiana would face, and they struggled to start the season a little bit. They came in here with I think 1 or 2 wins maybe, and they hadn't been performing to what people thought they were. But I thought they played really well tonight, and I thought they clearly outshot their percentages on the season by a lot, and they played really good defense. But I mean, at the end of the day, Indiana shouldn't be in close games, like that. But it's a learning experience, teach you a lot about your team if you're Archie Miller. Work on some things. But like you said, I really felt like there was a point in time in the second half where Indiana literally just reached back and they flipped the switch and they picked up their intensity level, and the crowd got behind them, and they went on, I believe it was a 26-8 run to close the game or something like that. And it started with a defensive intensity level. They forced turnovers, they got out and ran, which is where this team's at its best because they have great athletes. So they really succeed in transition and forcing turnovers and getting out and running is a big thing for this team. And it's going to, because it starts with the problem of scoring in the half court. And this team doesn't score very well in the half court right now. And Archie will continue to work more things in as the season goes along. But at some point, they're either good in the half court or they're not. And that's why, at the end of the day, they need to hang their hat on the defensive end and force turnovers so they can get out and run.
Absolutely. Joined by Drew Davis from Pigs.com. If you listen to the show, of course, you hear Drew on each Monday and Friday with us. But tonight, Juwan Morgan, again, he put this team on his back. You can tell the senior leadership comes through. He knew that they needed him, and he stepped up in a huge way, and in a different way than normal. But 19 first-half points, he would end up with 31, 3 short of his career high. But what he did have a career high in was 5 made 3-pointers. Man, he lit it up from behind the arc tonight.
I know, he was shooting very unconsciously. He was just letting it fly like it was natural, and he shot with great confidence. And had a coach tell me one time, if you believe in it and you start shooting it with confidence, and it's going to start to go in. And that appeared to be the case for Juwan tonight, as he made more threes tonight than he had all season. He had 4 coming in, he made 5 tonight, and he was huge. He scored more points than the rest of the team combined in the first half, 19 of the first 36. They needed that. They were dead in the water without him in the first half. No one else had the energy that he had. No one else had the activity level he had. And he was huge for Indiana. And then in the second half, as the opposing coach, they had to make some decisions of what they were going to take away, what they were going to do to limit Juwan Morgan. And what that did was open up things for other people on the perimeter. And, Romeo Langford looked lost for all of 29, 30 minutes out there. And then he just kind of, looked like something clicked for him. And I think a part of that was Juwan, opening a lot up for him. And it made life easier on Romeo. And those final, 5 to 7 minutes is exactly what this Indiana team should look like when they're playing at its best. And that's exactly how they should play every game. But will we get that intensity level and energy level consistently?
Yeah, and Juwan Morgan, that senior leadership stepping up, being the impetus for Romeo kicking off. But we can't lose sight of the fact that they still are without 4 major contributors to this team. Zach McRoberts, who is a starter, Devontae Green, who's really a starter, both not playing still. Race Thompson not playing. Jerome Hunter with surgery on the sidelines. And Deron Davis did make an appearance tonight. He gave some good supportive minutes, but it wasn't the Deron that we saw against Arkansas. He's still trying to get back and get through these injuries and these nagging little injuries that has just beset this team this year, unfortunately, and has really put them behind as they head to Duke on Tuesday. But this team has not gotten to play together as a team, and I don't know if it was that or just being worn down, because these guys have been playing a ton of minutes. And tonight, Juwan played 40 out of 40 minutes. Romeo played 39, 29. So that's a lot of minutes for guys to have to play.
Right. as a coach, when you can turn to a guy and say, you're Mr. 40 minutes tonight, and they're out there, they don't complain, they give it all they have. It's exactly what you expect from a senior like Juwan, and I just can't put words to describe how valuable he is to this team and what honestly he's meant for this program over the last 2 years. Because, like, you're sitting here and looking at a loss to UC Davis tonight. Juwan Morgan's not here, but asking him to play 40 minutes, that's a lot. You can't expect that on a nightly basis. You can't expect a freshman in Romeo Langford to play 39. You got Al Durham playing 38. You got Finney playing 36. That's an extreme workload. And as the talent level gets up, higher when you play better teams, your guys are going to get worn down faster. And I could guarantee you that those guys are not going to be able to handle that type of workload against Duke. It's just not realistic. So, what Archie really needs to happen is he needs, some of these other guys hopefully can make their return against Duke, so he has a little more depth. Maybe Devontae Green or Zach McRoberts would be huge. And Deron Davis, like you said, was able to give a little bit tonight. Since they were short-handed, but he was limited. I mean, he gave you mostly what he could, but he's still working his way back. He's not 100%, and he just went out there, basically gave you a couple fill minutes here and there. And I mean, Indiana just really needs to get those guys back. And I think another thing that some people are overlooking is how big the loss of Jerome Hunter is. I know it's been we've had a couple days or so to process that, but to me, Jerome Hunter had the opportunity to bring something to this team that they don't really have. And, you look at the wings, and right now they're playing 3 guards because they don't have another wing, and McRoberts is out. But outside of McRoberts, and you look at all the other wings, outside of, Romeo out there, obviously, but you look at all the other ones, and no one really has that athletic ability or just ability to play the game at a higher level like Jerome has. He can step outside, knock down shots at a respectable level. He's got good size, 6'7", he's got good length, and he's just coming into his own out there. That's something that there's not really anyone else that can bring to the table, and I think that's something that's going to hurt Indiana in the long term.
And even though the depletion of the ranks has really hurt them defensively, they came into this game ranked 9th in the country at holding opponents to 21.1% three-point shooting, something like that. But tonight, UC Davis, they went off. In the first half alone, they shot 54% from behind the line. And for the game, they'd end up shooting 50%. IU also shot the ball extremely well tonight. They were 58%, 10 of 17 behind the arc. A very good night shooting for them. But, of course, a lot of that is coming from Juwan Morgan tonight as he just lit it up inside and out. What a great night for them. And they finally get the defense coming around towards the end of the game. The last 5-6 minutes, they really put the clamps down on them.
I looked at the halftime shooting numbers for Indiana, and I was kind of, scratching my head, sitting there saying to myself, how is this a 2-point game? You shoot the ball that well, especially with this team. You think, oh, wow, that's a big lead at halftime, because they're usually great on the defensive end. But that's something I really don't have an answer for because, UC Davis almost doubled their percentages tonight, and I don't know if that's a product of just an anomaly. I don't know if it's an anomaly or Indiana just not playing good defense, but I think part of it is Indiana's got to do a little bit better job of closing out on shooters and pressure in the basketball. Far too often I'm seeing a late closeout. It's there, but it's not. It's 1 step or 2 steps too slow, and that can't happen. And Indiana's also, like I said, they got to pressure the ball because you see what happened for Indiana on the offensive end. They were struggling to get into their offense, and that starts with pressure on the ball. Indiana's able to replicate that on the defensive end. Then UC Davis would have probably been much more of a mess on the offensive end because they would have had to work very hard to get shots. And it just starts with being able to get in your offense. If you can get into it, life's a lot easier than having to grind it out.
Yeah, we forget also that this defensive team is relying on several freshmen, whether it's Romeo Langford, Rob Finney, Demezy Anderson. These guys are out here playing defense, and they're still freshmen. They're still learning. So now we move forward. A huge game for Indiana coming up on Tuesday as they head to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, to take on the #1 Duke Blue Devils, who at least we know they're human. They lose to Gonzaga the other night, but Gonzaga, a very big, experienced team. This is not a big, experienced team Indiana has. They have a young team and a young, depleted team. So they're going in to kind of beat up and banged up, but we're hoping and thinking they may get a lot of these guys back in time for this game at Duke.
I know this game is a very tough matchup for Indiana. It's almost like the odds are stacked against them. They're going into Cameron Indoor, very very tough place to play. You're playing one of the best teams in the country. Obviously, they won't be ranked number one after the loss to Gonzaga, but there's no shame in them losing to Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a really good basketball team, well coached by Mark Few, and they showed a bit of a good game plan to kind of beat Duke. You want to really take care of the basketball against Duke, because if you let them get on in transition, you're going to pay for it. You can't do anything about the size and athleticism of guys like R.J. Barrett, Cam Reddish, and Zion Williamson. There's just not much of an answer. Not many people have that much athletic ability or sheer ability on their roster. But the other thing you have to do is you have to make Duke play in the half court. When you're a younger team and you're inexperienced, it's harder to score in the half court. Make life difficult on them. And you got to run good stuff on offense and get good shots, because if you start shooting a lot of bad threes, start jacking, that's going to lead to them getting out in transition. It's almost like a turnover. So you got to come in and you want to play at your pace. You don't want to get sped up, and I think that's what Indiana really needs to focus on. If they could do that, they'll have a chance to beat Duke, but it's still going to be tough going into their building. And then the other thing you have to do is you have to find a way to. You can't completely slow him down because he's such a physical specimen, but you got to find a way to just slow him down and make life as difficult as possible on Zion Williamson, because he's key for them.
Well, one of the good things is Indiana goes down to Raleigh-Durham with no pressure on it, because there is no expectation of them doing anything, especially right now with the roster depleted. They have not been playing their best basketball, and Duke is their number one in the country, so the pressure is not really on Indiana. So maybe that will allow them to put on a better performance. A good overall performance tonight at the end of the game, not so much in the beginning. They ended up with 4 players double figures. Justin Smith, 11 points. And I got to tell you, I'm kind of disappointed in Justin Smith's play this year. We heard so much about how he had bulked up and strengthened up and gotten bigger and stronger and jumped in 7 inches higher, but yet it's not translating to the court. It seems like he's, I guess for lack of a better word, statistically softer than some of the other players right now.
Right. With Justin, the big thing was, that added extra strength in the upper body, so whenever he would go airborne, it wasn't as easy for defenders to knock him off his track to the basket. There's so many times we see him go soaring down the lane and he almost finishes something. I'd like to see him start finishing more of those. The big thing for him is he's not looking very confident when he goes to finish around the rim. He's going in kind of soft and looking like he's expecting contact, but kind of fading away from it, not seeking it out. And the big thing for him is he's just got to seek out contact, be strong, and be confident in his ability to finish around the rim, and he'll be fine. Justin's got to realize where his bread is butter, and that's an energy guy, rebounding the basketball, doing the dirty work, playing good defense, blocking shots, and scoring around the rim. And that's what he's got to do well. And for this team to, reach his potential, they're going to need Justin to reach his potential. Absolutely.
One of 4 guys in double figures tonight. I already talked about Juwan Morgan with his 31 points. Romeo Langford, 20 points on the night, 5 rebounds. A good night for Romeo once he got going, as you talked about. But in the early going, he wasn't there. And also Al Durham, a good performance by Al. 12 points on the night, 2 of 4 from the field, 2 of 3 from the three-point line, and 6 of 8 from behind at the free throw line. Good night, solid night for Al Durham, and it's exactly what they need from him. Now if they can get some of these other guys back as they head down to Duke and the other games coming up, Big Ten play starting soon thereafter. So it's not going to get any easier for Indiana now.
No, I think that the stretch starting at Duke might be, 5 consecutive Power 6 conference opponents, and obviously conference play. You got a road game with Penn State mixed in there. You got home date against Louisville and a neutral site game with, Butler this year. And so, it's going to be a tough stretch. And for Indiana, I think this stretch will make this team better in the long run. I think it'll tell Archie Miller and his staff a lot about their team that they don't already know. Absolutely. That's going to wrap up tonight. Indiana does win 76-62 over UC Davis. The Aggies here at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. The next game up for the Hoosiers. They travel down to Raleigh-Durham next Tuesday for a matchup with number 1, the Duke Blue Devils. For Drew Davis, I'm Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat. Make sure you tune in to Indiana Sports Beat each Monday through Friday. We're live 6 to 8. You can catch it on indianasportsbeat.com or Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcast, all of those, the usual suspects, Facebook as well. But we'll be there for the complete coverage. Also, tomorrow is Bucket Day. The Hoosiers take on the Purdue Boilermakers in football. That's at noon. We'll be there for that coverage. And on Sunday, the Indiana Hoosiers have a soccer match here against the Air Force as they play in the round of 16 as their quest for title number 9 continues as they look to move forward there on the pitch on the soccer field. That's going to wrap it up for us here at the Simon Scott Assembly Hall. I'm Jim Coyle for Drew Davis, and I'll see you on the radio.